Hello everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel for novice writers by novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And here's a review that I've been looking forward to doing for a long time now. Darling in the Franxx. It has probably been the biggest anime surprise for me since Konosuba. What I thought would be just a flashy sexualized disappointment ended up being something that I have looked forward to for every weekend, for months. Now then, I will admit that a lot of reviewers got pretty upset about the show's finale, and I can understand a lot of the criticism that was lobbed its way and even agree with some of it. However, from a writer's point of view, Darling in the Franxx is largely a resounding success. And from a writing perspective, this is how I will approach this review. And as a quick disclaimer, this is by no means a comprehensive analysis and review. In order to do that, there should be an honest conversation between multiple people who've watched the series. And hey, I'm game to do that if any of you out there are. But let's get on with the show. I think a good place to begin with this review is what kind of story Darling in the Franxx is. Honestly, it's hard to define because the show constantly swaps masks and hats. It might feel like it has an identity crisis at times because the show starts off as a highly sexualized mecha anime that beats you over the head with A1 eye candy, sex references, robots powered by orgasms, and an awkward love triangle. And then it shifts to a story of teens discovering their humanity in a dystopian, apocalyptic future where humanity is artificially created, supplanted, and replaced with a meaningless existence. And it again transitions to a narrative of a girl discovering what it means to be human. And then it is revealed to be a story of true love covered up by a mind wipe. And then it becomes a war story. It shifts yet again to be an apocalyptic slice of life. And it finally concludes as a mecha god space war. So, really, what is this story? It is an end-of-the-world conflict, told in the context and through the eyes of a love story. Much like M. Night Shyamalan's movies Signs in the Village, once you know what the story is that is actually being told, it starts making much more sense. And this love story of Zero, Two, and Hero is absolutely the guiding and focal force of this show. Seeing Darling in the Franxx in this light shifts the tone and the themes within the show to make much more sense. The series evolves as the relationship between Zero Two and Hero progresses. Now, as a little bit of a side story to kind of put what I'm about to say into greater context, a while back, Jed, Camille, and myself took classes on how to build healthy relationships, specifically how to not be a major creep when it comes to dating. Camille and I were largely there for the free food and to deliver a running commentary from the back, much like the Muppets hecklers, whereas Jed was actually paying attention and that lucky dog is now married. But while Camille and I made fun of people for their unrealistic romantic expectations, I did pick up on a few things that were brought up in the class. Attraction and romance usually begin with allurement, normally something physical. That's just the way that things are. There is a desire that then you want to get to know the person a little bit better after you realize, hey, that person's hot. And yeah, that might sound really shallow to some of you out there who believe in love at first sight, or that there is a spark that forms between two people, deep and mysterious, to one day be fanned into a bonfire of love. But that's just the way it is for most people, and that's okay, because all worthwhile and good relationships are a work in progress. So from there, a couple, usually awkwardly, flirts and starts to get to know one another better, and as they come to know each other better, their faults will come to light. This is where they then have to work out their differences, seek to better themselves, grow more intimate, share, and become ultimately selfless. That is, if you want your relationship to progress, if you actually say, hey, you know what, I really like you, and let's see where this goes. As this process continues, love transforms from that burning passion of 1,000 suns, curse you middle school for that description, to the steel of resolve and dedication, the summer day of affection and love, and the refuge to weather any storm. Well, there is a lot that can be said about love, and each person describes it slightly differently, which is why writing a good romance is so dang hard. So good on Trigger for writing a great love story. The entire series follows this progression of love from beginning to end. This review is titled The Good, the Bad, and the Beautiful. That is how I'm going to pick apart Darling in the Franxx and give some good writing advice from this anime. So starting off first with The Good. Squad 13. This is one of the show's greatest strengths. From Goro to Ichigo, Zorome to Miku, Futoshi, Kokoro, Mitsuru, and Ikono, all of them get character development on their own and as a group, and in relation to 02 and Hiro. The show deals brilliantly with its supporting cast. Each character gets a chance to interact with the lead protagonists in what would be essentially a chapter if this show were in book form. And they are all given at least one subplot that has a full intro, development, and a resolution, like the main plot itself. And what is more is that these subplots feed seamlessly into the main story. This is what The Last Jedi failed to do with the casino planets. But moving on! Squad 13's development reminds me a lot of Kelsier's crew in Mistborn. Yes, once again, I'm going back to Sanderson. Get used to it! And in that book, they are also fully fleshed out through various subplots that help to push the main plot along. So let's look at the show. Futoshi's silly adventures to impress Kokoro teach Hiro to be really more selfless and less selfish in the way he regards 02, and this is critical to the run of episodes 12 to 15. Goro learning to live in the moment and be honest with himself is also essential to Hiro's heroic actions in episode 15, being able to put off the things that have held him back for so long. Ichigo's love troubles contribute to 02's own problems with the squad and her eventual acceptance into the group. Miku's struggle to find her place in the big world of Darling in the Franxx, and to know what exactly her relationship with Zorome is, mirrors what is happening the most with the teens. Zorome's journey to become like the adults but learning the terrible truth that they, the kids, are just basically cannon fodder, acts much in the same way as Miku's predicament. Kokoro's desire to have a kid is very important to the plot's ending, and Mitsuru's development for the first half of the series acts as an important insight to the person Hiro once was before his memories were erased. Finally, Ikono exploring her sexuality diversifies the overall situation and shows that the other characters are also willing to go the distance for the people they love. Hiro does not have a monopoly on that, which gives the entire cast way more autonomy. That is crucial when writing your supporting cast. They should not just exist to help move the plot along and support the lead protagonists. While watching Darling in the Franxx, I was reminded a lot of the series The Reckoners, which is another YA story that starts out manageable enough and then grows into something enormous. I love both stories, but I think Darling manages the supporting cast better. So sorry, Brandon Sanderson, that's yet another series from him. Not even you are above criticism. I'm sorry, but your supporting cast in the Reckoners series just did not do the story justice as they could have done. In any case, moving on, another good aspect of the show's writing is that it was unafraid to go the extra mile in terms of scope. The introduction of Harem as the main villains allowed the Klaxosaurs to have a real place within the story as their history was revealed. The galactic battle mirrored the lost feelings that the kids have while growing up, but then the rising up as they mature to meet the life of an adult, no matter how confusing or scary it looks. I know that sounds kind of crazy to say it right there, but really, with space being so unknowable, kind of like growing up, it serves as a perfect metaphor for really growing up and embracing an unknowable future, but rising up to fill it, which I always really like. And that's maybe something I just get because I really enjoy the show Outlaw Star. I think also, as another thing that was done really well, is that Ikuno's confession to Ichigo is one of the most tasteful LGBTQ moments in a show that I have recently seen, in that the two girls honestly talk about their feelings and position. We don't get an instant make out or rejection, but a promise to figure things out. And in the context of relationships being a work in progress, that was quite realistic. The show does not shy away from introducing and exploring themes that it should. And as for the ending, it was wrapped up very convincingly and succinctly. The main conflict of Hero and Zero Two's relationship was resolved. The parasites all got happy endings, and Verum was defeated, allowing humanity to thrive as the Klaxosaurs gave life back to the Earth by returning the energy they had taken. However, knowing that Verum will one day return and seeing the new Hero and Zero Two meet at the very end, there is room for a sequel. A good rule of thumb for writing any book, even if you have a series in mind, is that the first book is supposed to nicely wrap up the main conflict of the story where it is at that moment, but leave just enough unresolved to allow for follow-up stories. Now for the bad. The show's pacing was absolutely deplorable! This was a show that needed 2 seasons to allow every element to properly mature and for each concept to be fully explored. The first season should have been an expansion of episodes 1 through 15, and the second season should have been an expansion of 16 through 24. Those episodes, if that had been done, it wouldn't have felt so rushed. In fact, if the second season had been done that way, it could have given us more into the Klaxosaurs and who they were. Dr. Franxx would have felt as a more relatable character. Haichi and Nana's backstory would have been better, and the lead into Verum's invasion would not have felt as so much of a cop-out in many ways. It would have had a much better foreshadowing. And that would have made Darling in the Franxx on par with the greatest mecha anime. I mean, watching episodes 12 through 15 feels like the crazy, speedy, and fulfilling conclusion to Gurren Lagann, while the actual finale didn't fully capture the same flair. Nearly all of the show's problems come from bad pacing. So take that strongly into consideration while writing. At what pace is your story moving along? Measure that according to the scope of your tale, of your overall story. We can forgive a series like The Wheel of Time or A Song of Fire and Ice, The Dragon Rise of Perm, and The Stormlight Archive for taking their time to expand because of the massive scope that they have. Whereas on the other hand, I personally feel like 100 Cupboards as a book failed because it was too much too quick without allowing the reader to fully digest the cast and the situation. For the story of Zero Two and Hero, the pacing was perfect, but for the rest of the story, it was an extreme detriment. Why did we get no foreshadowing to Verum ahead of time? Because there was just not enough time. I love the introduction to the aliens because they symbolize a new level of the main couple's relationship, as well as providing better world context to the conflict between humans and Klaxosaurs. But the step up to that was terrible because there was no time. Why did a lot of the themes of sexuality, independence, and finding one's place suddenly disappear? Or questions regarding previous parasites, the stampede mode, apes' dominance of the adults? Why did the ending for Squad 13 not feel as fulfilling as it could have been, though it was happy? Just not enough time was used to set up all those little happy endings. Not enough time was given to each important question that helped drive the show along. I personally feel, once again, that had the show split itself into 2 seasons, it could have addressed all of these questions satisfactorily. When you look at the triumph that was episodes 13 and 15 in particular, you know the staff was capable of delivering, but timing got the better of them. Proper pacing is essential to a good story. Know exactly what you want to deliver and how, and that will determine your strides through your chapters and prose. And at last we come to the Beautiful. I honestly think that the show, even with its flaws, is a beautiful one. Will it become a masterpiece someday? Who knows? I think in a few years, looking back, anime fans might be able to deliver a good answer to that. But what is clear right now is that the tale of Zero Two and her darling is incredible. I will contend that it is one of the best anime love stories ever told. And it does a better job than most YA or even a lot of adult romance. And here is why. It follows through the entire process of falling in love, becoming a couple, exploring heartache, breaking up, reconciliation, communication, growing old together, and becoming one. Though they are just teenagers, their relationship becomes wonderfully matured by the second half of the series by taking the plunge and making some bold statements, which include even toxic relationships can be saved and become wonderful. Love at first sight doesn't guarantee a happy ending. You make your happy ending together. You need to talk. Just being in love isn't enough. You must understand one another. You become one through genuine selflessness and devotion, and eventually you will die, but your love will never be lost on the other person. As you become one in a relationship, you become strong, and the loss of that other person is a hole that will never be filled until you meet again. True, other stories have addressed these themes, and even sometimes altogether, but Darling in the Franxx delivers these messages in an absolutely beautiful progression of events. Remember, this is a story about the end of the world, framed by a love story. This means that every event in the grand conflict is symbolic of Hero and Zero Two's evolving feelings and relationship. It goes from immature, purely sexual, to thoughtful and angsty in the battles of the first 6 episodes, but then it transitions to more serious commitment and then misunderstandings as the squad explores the deserted world and starts asking questions. Once Ape makes their move on the Grande Crevasse, Hero and Zero Two have to confront the immaturity and toxicity of their previous relationship and overcome them. Episode 15, The Battle of the Crevasse, does this amazingly well, and Episode 13 gives us all the necessary background information for that to happen, along with one of the cutest and darkest setups of love at first sight. Once Verm arrives on the scene, the quest to save Hero and Zero Two ensue. It is indicative of them becoming adults and deciding to become one. This is no pinky swear to be in love kind of nonsense. This is the literal plunge into marriage, as seen by Zero Two's final form as the true Strelitzia Apis, complete with a wedding gown. The journey to fight Verm in space felt like it was a bit mundane and anticlimactic, but hey, that's marriage! It is being together in both the long, boring slogs and then the quick bursts of action, such as we see in the Space Quest. That's marriage for you. Then they die together only to find one another later on. I know that such a quick summary doesn't do the story justice, but this progression of events is what makes it amazing. Another thing to note is the interactions between Hero and Zero Two. We get the painfully awkward and hilarious flirting at the beginning, which transforms to mostly physical touch and then matures to a blend of meaningful words between the two, and then physical touch to emphasize their feelings rather than just to solely express them. And I find this to be very telling when you compare their relationship against Mitsuru and Kokoro's, where we get the scenes leading up to and right after those two having sex, but we don't get that with the main couple. Not to say that they never did it. This further highlights the maturity and trajectory of their relationship. As the main couple through whom the show is delivered and put into context, if you're going to tell a story about growing love, it cannot all be about the physical aspect of it. This is yet again a very smart move on the part of the writers, as that frames the show's crazy ending and drives home the deeper meaning. And as far as beauty goes, let's be honest here, Zero Two is the character that drives this whole story. Her complex moods, her quirks, flirtations, backstory, and the way they drew her just pulls you in. I was going to drop the show after its 3rd episode originally, to be all honest, but I was so intrigued by her character that I just kept watching. This is one of the things that has saved many stories in the past, is that it had a very well-written character, and in this case, it is Zero Two. I mean, just look at these smiles. Yeah. That's some good stuff. They've saved the fan base multiple times. So here's the advice. To make a love story truly wonderful, you have to follow through with it. If you're writing a story that ends with someone asking the other out on a date rather than going the extra mile, or them finally becoming a couple, or maybe even them breaking up, that's totally fine to do. But you have to follow through still with the emotions and with the interactions that come with that. Romance is continuous, not bound for stagnation. Those situations and tales can be written incredibly, but a long-lasting love, a long-lasting kind of story such as this is one that is allowing us to see the full progression of a couple. You want to make sure that you show that life still goes on, whether they are together or apart, because life and romance constantly flow. Darling in the Franxx will become a staple of anime for me in the future when it comes to understanding and writing romance. That much is clear. I think it is good to still balance it out with other examples of other romantic writing and other romantic shows out there, which I hope to add to my repertoire as my viewing and readings go on. It's sad to say goodbye to such an engaging and beautiful show. As I was putting together what this review would be, as I was doing my writing, doing my research, and looking at pics and whatnot, I honestly got emotional doing it. It's been such a long time since I was last this invested in a show and was so taken by a story that was written so well. It was good at times, it was bad at others, but overall, Darling in the Franxx was wonderful. Now, may you go out there and write the next successor in romance or teenage angst or mecha, because we cannot stop here. Darling in the Franxx is a wonderful show. But just as romance continues to go on, so too should our imagination and our creativity right here when it comes to writing and telling stories. Let Darling in the Franxx not be an end, but a springboard to something even greater. You writers out there are the ones who will build on the foundations of past great stories and one day publish or animate the tales that will make YouTubers everywhere go giddy with excitement. And as you write those future masterpieces, check out our podcast episodes on Podbean, iTunes, and Google Play. We also have Tumblr, Pinterest, and Reddit sites for you to check out to get writing ideas and engage in conversations with us and with other writers. And we are always on the prowl for terrible fanfictions to do epic readings of. If you have one in mind for us to do, please send us a link via our Twitter at Camille's Harem. Finally, if you haven't seen Darling in the Franxx yet, I encourage you to do so and start up a conversation with us about it. And please consider subscribing to our channel, clicking the bell icon, and sharing our content with anyone you feel would like it. Thanks so much for spending time with us on this adventure we call writing. And until next time, tschüss.